This video is brought to you by our Patreons. If you want to make sure that we can create more content like this, consider supporting us on our Patreon. Thank you. Alright, hey, welcome to our first ever video with the two of us both recording at the same time. I'll just tell you about the format real quick. I'll be summarizing and giving you the top 10 ideas from the Wealth of Nations, and I'll sort of tell them to Lena, and she'll respond in any way that she wishes, giving us her thoughts, asking if anything is unclear, and maybe telling me if she would have ranked the ideas in a similar way or maybe not. Additionally, Lena has not read up on the book. She is purposefully unprepared, so you're going to get her spontaneous reaction. Number 10. Real wealth means having lots of tradable goods, not lots of gold. So this is sort of the idea and the debate from chapter 1 of real versus nominal value.
Oh, totally. That's like true in today's, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The majority of wealth for like the wealthiest people is non-taxable.
And it's kind of where Smith disproves or debates the idea that it used to be that nations thought that they were rich based on how much gold and silver they had. But Smith argues that that's not really the case, because if your country has lots of gold but no goods, that just means that there are very few goods that are going to be priced really high. And so you're not really wealthy because the supply of gold is high. The demand for goods will be very high as well. So, if you're just sitting on a pile of gold, that doesn't mean you can eat anything. So he argues that real wealth is based in goods and useful goods and not gold itself. Yeah. And this idea, sorry.
You just have a whole little lecture planned out.
This idea, I just have one last.
You know what? I just have
one last sentence. Yeah, because I originally thought
that this whole thing was your time to shine and make me look like a dumb thing. I just learned.
No, that's not true at all.
I just realized that it's you trying to be a teacher, and my whole job is to interrupt you as a student.
No.
Which is my dream.
All right, let's jump on to idea number 9, which is the accumulation of capital serves everybody. According to Smith, the building up of capital is essential for economic progress. So that's kind of the idea that if you use all your income for consumption instead of investing, you can never create new value with it. For example, by investing in new machines or by putting money into universities. So the more you invest, the more productive you become, is sort of the idea. And this is thought to be kind of a virtuous cycle, according to Smith, where if everyone just does that, then everybody will become richer.
What if you just use your extra capital to do things that benefit you and nobody else? Or
Yeah. I mean, for that thesis to hold, you'd have to invest in creating products that solely you yourself want to consume. And nobody else. Because if you invested in something that other people want to consume, then you're creating value for somebody else. But if you're investing in like a pencil maker machine that makes pencils that only you like and nobody else likes, then I would argue that's not investment, that's consumption.
I guess he's kind of, yeah, I don't know. He's assuming it's almost like a certain amount of the capital is definitely going back into more investments in society. But a lot of the time it's like the more surplus capital you have with your successful business, you just increase all the shareholders' salaries and then just take it. And it's invested into making a mansion for yourself and going on jet planes.
Yeah. So that's when it would go towards consumption, right? Mm-hmm. Just consumption of the ultra rich.
Yeah, but then it's directly the capital, of the company, basically. I mean.
Yeah.
But my point is like you can have more success can not at all bleed into the rest of society.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He might be oversimplifying something here. And he's sort of ignoring that it would lead to accumulation of capital, I guess.
Yeah. Or like sometimes when people have extra capital, they just go, thanks.
Thanks for the extra capital, man.
And you go,
like that stuff.
No, that's for investing and improving society. Or me, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's true. Idea number 8. Restrictions on trade make both sides poorer. So that's just the idea that just like individuals, nations can gain from specialization. And some nations are just more suited to be producing a particular product than others, you know. So Smith kind of gives an example here where he says that there's no point in growing grapes in Scotland when you can grow them in France, where they just easily grow. And so in a way, both would be better off if everybody just grew their grapes in France and they traded. So he says countries should make what they're best at, and that's why restrictions on trade make both sides poorer. Actually, not very controversial if you ask me.
That's generally true.
Yeah, I agree.
It hasn't stopped us from doing restrictions on trade in order to like foster certain industries within your country. Right now I'm thinking of agriculture in America.
Idea number 7. Government has 3 basic functions. So this is sort of the idea that Smith doesn't want government to interfere with the market that much. And he says that government should be pretty much limited to doing the following 3 things, which is number 1, enforce laws, so the rule of law, protect a nation's borders, and invest in public works, which I kind of feel like investing in public works, that could be lots of things, for being honest.
Yeah.
He's kind of leaving a loophole there to that we can drive a truck through.
By today's standards, that was an Arnold Schwarzenegger reference.
Ooh.
But by today's standards, like doing public works, what?
That's not a right-wing talking point at all.
Communism?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So is it possible that Adam Smith's definition of a small government is different than the definition of a small government today?
Yeah.
And that people are often misinterpret theorists? Yeah,
he's nowhere near as anti-government as some on the right would think. Yeah, it's true. Kind of a wrong idol, or not a false idol, but a mistaken idol, like a misinterpreted idol of the right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I never got that while I was reading him. He was never seeming like, by what we would call like right wing. I never felt like I was reading
I agree.
a quote unquote right wing book.
Well, I think compared to like Milton Friedman or Hayek, he's really very centrist, actually. Because if you read Friedman and Hayek, or if you just listen to them talk, they are pretty right-wing.
They have like a clear ideological
Smith, not so much.
Like framework and...
Yeah.
Not that the center doesn't have an ideological framework either. That would be a mischaracterization.
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Good point. Idea number 6. Self-interest is a good thing. So that's the basic idea that if everybody just acts in their self-interest, society can function really well. And this is a very simple but really important idea in Smith's work. He kind of says that we don't all need to be altruistic for society to work, but we can be self-serving, and it works just as well, apparently.
Just as well? Did we speak too soon with the last point? Perhaps. I mean, did Adam Smith
I don't
consider
know.
himself a Christian? Because I would say that's the exact opposite
I don't know.
of Christian values.
I've actually researched that. I don't know. He apparently he wanted to become a priest at some point in his life, but then again, back then everybody pretty much wanted to become a priest at some point in their lives. So it's not really that special.
Serving people doesn't do anything better than if I just pursue my own self-interest.
I think you could make that point to sound less controversial, and then it would ring true. I don't know. I just feel like I basically think the humans aren't evil or good, but humans just sort of follow incentives and incentive structures. I think that Smith's point is pretty much just if we follow our own egoistical incentives, then society can still work. And I think that's not I don't think that's a terribly wrong idea. I actually agree with that. Yeah.
I agree with that, but I'm saying Adam Smith, like that sentence is really the opposite of what Jesus would say. And so then it interests me that was he religious, because a lot of people claim to be Christian at that period of time. And it sounds like he was not really Christian. That seems like the polar opposite of Christianity.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right.
And then the other thing I would say is a lot of the bad things that happen are people following their own incentive, And I have this perspective, like, we shouldn't blame individual companies for doing things when they're just following their profit incentive. You should blame the framework that allows them to behave unethically.
Yeah. Like, hate the game, not the player.
And then clearly that example is, people following their own profit incentive, their own self-interest, is exactly what leads to things like child labor in developing countries. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, Marx has the same thing with capitalists. He points out that we shouldn't blame capitalists for anything because they're just following the structure of their incentives. All right, idea number 5, wages, profits, and rent determine prices. So it's just the idea that all these 3 components is what makes up the prices of things. That's very straightforward, actually. So kind of the merchant needs to pay rent for the land that they produce something on. They need to pay the workers wages, and they also want to make a profit. So it's rent plus profits plus wages is prices.
I mean, sure, why not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What are you going to say about it?
I guess it depends on his definitions of all those things.
That's a good.
I imagine some comment being like, Smith forgot about metal.
Yeah.
And it's like, maybe if we actually look like at the definition he meant by rent, he meant then all the products of the things.
Yeah, like Jordan Peterson. What do you mean by rent?
If you want to do a Jordan Peterson impression, you have to sound like Kermit the Frog. What do you mean? I can't do it.
Wait, is it like nasal? Like, what do you mean? No.
What do you mean? I've got a little closer there.
Yeah.
But the liberal Marxists.
Idea number 4. That's actually a chapter that you summarized, I think. Trade enables the division of labor. So this is taken straight from chapter 2 and 3. So if you trade products, you can specialize to a much greater extent. And so you don't have to make shirts yourself. If you can trade.
Yeah, sure.
You can just buy the shirts from the market. And so that specialization allows everybody to have a very specific task. Yeah.
Ja, hört gut an.
Yeah. What's all right. For all the listeners out there, you gotta actually know that Lena has a flawless command of the German language. All right, number 3 is actually really connected to number 2, which is the bigger the market, the more specialization can occur. So this point is very obvious. If you look at towns versus cities, right? If you have a town, then you have really small shops, not that many shops, and you have a big city. There's like a very specialized store for everything. Like down the street from where I live in Vienna, there's actually a shop that sells just pepper mills, nothing else. And that could never exist in a small town because nobody's buying that many pepper mills, you know?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's more division of labor with more people. Your capabilities are higher.
That's a good point.
I mean, it's an obvious point, right? I know.
Yeah. Idea number 2. The division of labor increases productivity. That's the whole idea of how splitting up production into smaller steps can increase the overall output. So Smith describes this with a pin. Let's say you want to make a pin or a nail or something. If you want to teach somebody to make an entire nail, that person is gonna need lots of skills. So they're gonna need to draw a wire, they're gonna need to cut the wire, they're gonna need to mold the head, to polish it, and do all these other things. And that's gonna take a really long time to learn. So they're gonna only be able to produce 1 pin a day, which is mentioned in chapter 1 of the Wealth of Nations. But if you can hire 10 people and teach them each one skill, like they all become specialized in one task of the process, then you can make sort of an assembly line, which means number 1, the quality increases, since we now are essentially producing with only specialists. Number 2, the speed increases, since these people don't waste time changing from one task to a different task. And number 3, the overall output increases, since people will eventually invent machines for the simple steps that they're performing.
I'm bored. Shut up. Yeah. It's got the pin.
It's the pin stuff. Number 1, the invisible hand. That idea was very clear to be number 1 for me, and it's taken straight from chapter 7. And it's the notion that supply and demand in the market will sort of balance each other out in the long run and create an equilibrium price. People reacting to prices and producing more or less or buying more or less is what balances them out. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
You have to see, like, you have to look into, you know, economics and be like, oh, does this stuff actually happen in real life? And I guess generally it does, doesn't it? But there's also
but there's rigidities in the system,
and there's other things, and it's not all, isn't it? It's the typical thing is that classic economics assumes everything flows in a way that makes like logical sense and is like harmonious, and then when you actually look at real economies, especially our modern economy, it's just like random things happen. And
I mean, we're making lots of assumptions with that rule, right? We're assuming that everybody has perfect knowledge of the market, which of course isn't true. Everybody has rational preferences and all those things. It's not perfectly the way that Smith. I still think it's a useful idea, though.
It's a good foundation to have. Learning economics.
I agree.
You know, it's like you almost can't learn how classical economics is wrong, and maybe in some ways it's right too. Yeah. But in the ways that it's wrong, you can't learn that it's wrong without learning it first, right?
That's a good point.
As John Stuart Mill said, sorry, my favorite person I've summarized so far is you have to understand the arguments that are incorrect too, in order to have a fuller understanding of what is correct.
All right, let's do a rundown real quick. Number 10, real wealth means having lots of tradable goods, not lots of gold. Number 9, the accumulation of capital serves everybody. Number 8, the restriction of trade makes both sides poorer. Number 7, government has 3 basic functions, which are enforcement of laws, protection of national borders, and public works. Number 6, self-interest is a good thing. Number 7, Number 5,
Greedy
wages,
bastards.
profits, and rent determine prices. Number 4, trade enables the division of labor. Number 3, the bigger the market, the more specialization can occur.
Yeah, sure.
Number 2, the division of labor increases productivity. And number 1, the invisible hand creates a balance between supply and demand, which determines prices and quantities.
I do also agree that the invisible hand is really relevant in terms of what did we find to basically not be true in the future, like during the future study of economics. You know, but not that lots of other things weren't the basis for other people's theories. Like, you know, there's a lot of debate against the division of labor actually being a natural thing. The interesting thing about Smith is he didn't just say that this happened, he's like, oh, and I'm tying it into human nature.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably what the revolutionary part of the idea is. Yeah, you're right. That's a good thing.
Which really, yeah, and I would say that's a big point, is just the connection to human nature.
Yeah.
Which really isn't true.
Yeah, you disagree with that.
It might be, maybe it's true for people in the West, but it's really, you know, you can say one example of people saying, well, this is how things are in the West, so this is human nature, and the whole world is like this, and it really wasn't, you know. Yeah, that's what I would say.